Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessing, family. I just wanted to really speak real briefly about how the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has played such a role in my life, in my evolution from the streets into where I'm at now. Because for any individual that knew me back then, right, knew that my street name was Shooter. I was really in them streets, because of my upbringing, I would explain to people that I didn't necessarily go out and choose the streets, although there's always a choice. However, the reason why I say that is because my mother was on crack and my father was addicted, and me growing up with them and finding myself homeless, which I didn't know I was homeless until I was grown, but homeless around the age of 13, I'm left in the streets. So being left in the streets and you still having to survive, still having to eat and whatnot, the things of the street became tools. And next thing you know, it became a part of my mindset. And for a long time, the world was no bigger than my hood. The world was no bigger than Houston for me. You know what I'm saying? My goal was no bigger than me trying to be the biggest dope dealer in Houston. Wow, that wasn't my only street tie. I was one of those individuals that done everything. From kicking in doors to jacking and playing with pistols and everything, so my mindset was just totally different. So I was in and out of prison, in and out. As soon as I come home, I go back in about 8 months. Being also one who ended up start smoking fry, for individuals out of Houston who know what that is. Some states may call it crazy sticks or wag or PCP or whatever, right? But I was one who started smoking fry every day, all day, then started doing powder and fry. And so my mindset was just totally different, you know what I'm saying? And even though I wanted out, because I had began my spiritual journey, even back then, me trying to figure out what this life and world was about. So I'm trying to figure it out even then, but it was only when I got out in 1997 and that I believe, totally broken down into a really dark state, a suicidal mindset, and then locked back up, that I realized I needed to change my response to life. In that process, I started reading everything. In that process, I had ended up coming across a brother who was Muslim in 2000, ended up started learning those teachings because, believe it or not, I grew up in the church, preacher, Bible, singing songs, playing drums, all that in the church. So I felt I knew Christianity pretty well. My grandfather was the individual. You ask a question, everything he said is quoted with scripture. Same thing with my grandmother. So it's not that I didn't have an understanding or a connection with the Bible and scripture and God at that time. It's just that my life experience began to contend with my understanding of God and scripture and things like that. So when I got in prison, I come across a brother who introduced me to Islam. At the time, I didn't even know what that was. He just introduced me to some information. I started reading the information. The information resonated with me. It brought a certain calmness in me. I gravitated to that. And at that time, that was orthodox, what they call, quote unquote, orthodox Islam. But in that process, I also was reading the Final Call, because the Final Call floats around prison very heavily. And I ended up getting my subscriptions of the Final Call. And so even though I was, quote unquote, orthodox Muslim, I still read the Final Call the entire time. Well, the entire time that I was Muslim, from the time 2000 till I was released into 2012. And so I did 14 years. But in that time frame, I must say that with all that I taught, with all that I read, and my understanding and my lack of understanding of things, right? I knew that when I came home, right, that I wanted to learn more about the Nation of Islam, the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so I came to the mosque, yet still my mindset was that I need to totally understand everything before I can embrace it, right? So I came across a little hiccup, something would explain to me the best way I felt I needed to understand it. I backed away, right? Because I felt I needed to understand it. But time went by. I'm steady looking at what's being produced in the nation. So anytime I look on social media, anytime I look in the neighborhoods and the hoods and whatnot, and I'm hearing how brothers respond to stuff, I'm hearing how the ministers respond to hate and whatnot, I'm saying to myself, every time I hear a response, wow, I wouldn't have responded like that. And so again, when I look into the neighborhood, and I'm quote unquote Orthodox Muslim, but I'm looking into the neighborhood and all I see is the Nation of Islam in the neighborhood dealing with our people, and I don't see hardly nobody else doing that. To me, When I look at the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I said, a man with a third grade education, and look at what we had today. Look at what that teacher has produced today. And so all I knew at that time was that God was present, that he had to be a part of what's going on. So when I came back into the process, my mindset was, I'm just going to submit to the process. And it's funny, I realized this here. I'm talking about I need to understand everything. I didn't understand everything about the Quran and the teachings in quote-unquote al-Islam. I say, so why would I apply that thinking to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? I said, so when I came in more humble this process. That as long as I stick with the process, my understanding will grow. My understanding will deepen. And so, with all that being said, I just wanted to share that information because this is what the life-giving teaching has done for me and put in my life, and I'm still striving. And I know that as long as I stick with the process, I'm going to get all that has been promised by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Farrakhan Muhammad. Peace and blessings.